Good afternoon, everyone. This is another episode of Something to Talk About. Today's guest is Brian Jordan, a retired law enforcement executive that I've known for about 15 years, who has over 40 years of experience working as a law enforcement executive in a large urban community, at a university, and doing law enforcement training. Obviously, with his previous professional experience, he's had a lot of opportunities to talk to people, both in a professional capacity and in a personal capacity. But what we're going to be talking about today is just in a general capacity. It can run from professional to personal and anywhere in between. So, Brian, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're talking today about choices and consequences in life. And I think we all know that we've had to make a series of choices throughout our life. They all come with a set of consequences. Let me just start by asking, is there one particular situation where you had to make a choice and the consequences that ensued were far beyond what you expected?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, not only have I had it started at a young age. I actually go back to me getting ready to go from elementary school to high school. I was part of the basketball team in my neighborhood, and I was recruited to play basketball at my high school. And so the summer between elementary school and high school, prior to that, I had already started practicing with the high school team. We were planning to get ready for the next season. And what happened was the coach was going to put us in a summer league tournament. So I told the high school coach that I couldn't play the summer league because I wasn't going to be in town. It wasn't true. And so
It was not true.
it was not true. I told him that because I wanted to play summer league with my neighborhood team.
Okay.
Well, being 13 years old, you you saying things and not understanding the consequences, that my neighborhood team put us in a tournament at my high school.
Mm, okay.
I showed up with my neighborhood team to play against my future high school team, and the coach was just totally pissed. And he's like, "Oh, okay, that's how you want to do it. If you want to play, you just come to tryouts." So again, arrogant 13 years old, thinking, "Oh, tryouts, I can make the tryouts and stuff." So when school started, here I am, a freshman, and I go to the tryouts, and me and this other guy who's trying out together, playing against the team that's already established, we have like a great tryout. So I'm sure I made the team. Coach comes over to me and says, "Hey, remember you screwed me this summer?
Mm,
Now it's now it's your turn. You didn't make the team."
okay.
All I knew at that time was sports, and I went to that high school to play basketball, and the consequences of not being able to play basketball, I never thought that would happen. So again, my freshman year was a disaster. I think come midterms, I had six, seven D's and an F.
Oh, it just really messed you up.
I was lost. I was 13. I didn't know what to do. School was about sports and all those things. So you know that kind of messed me up. But again, it also opened another door because I said, okay, since I can't play basketball, I'll go out for football. And I went out for football, and first thing they say is, "Let me see your grades." And so I had to show them my grades. And back then they could use the paddle, and so you got a paddle. You got one paddle for every D and two for every F.
You must have had
So,
a hard time sitting down.
oh man, oh man. So when you start talking about consequences,
Mm,
that to learn consequences at 13, and we're talking external consequences. Your mother would tell you something, and a whooping was a whooping. It wasn't the same.
Mm.
But that was the reality check with regard to consequences that I learned at an early age, that if you don't want to face the consequences, you have to do the right thing.
Let's, okay, let's talk about that because sometimes the right thing isn't easily identified.
Absolutely.
It's there are a series of options that you have, and you have to select one. And you don't always know how it's going to play out. You just have to make choice. And oftentimes, once you've made the choice, if the outcome is not as anticipated, you're forced to have to pivot.
Right. And so to that end, I think that I adopted two things from that. One is that I understand that you make decisions you have to live with. So when he kicked me off the team, and I still tell this story some almost 50 some years later, because what it taught me was good, bad, or indifferent, make a decision you can live with. And that if you can live with the decision, it don't make a difference whether it didn't turn out the way you wanted, that you're okay with it. And the second part is don't waste a lie. That when it came down to the consequences of that decision, the consequences was based on the lie. That I didn't make a decision of saying, "Hey, coach, I'm gonna go play with them," or can I do both or whatever. I tried to lie my way out of it, and
Okay.
so that's where I start saying to myself, "Don't waste a lie." There may be some things to protect your hide that you really have to question whether I need to tell the truth, which is why in law enforcement they tell you your Miranda rights, because they don't want you to say something that's going to hurt you. So, when it comes down to consequences and decisions, those two principles of do what you can stand and don't waste a lie kind of centers how I approach those things, because if those things happen, I can live with the decision. It didn't have to be right, didn't have to take me where I wanted to go, but I can live with it because it was a moral and ethical decision that led to the consequences.
I'm gonna share with you an example from my experience. It's a little bit different. It wasn't a situation where I lied. I had recently graduated from college and had run into an ex friend of mine from high school. My father was military, so we were overseas. And this guy was a friend. My father would kill me if he heard me say he was a friend. He was a GI, but he was 18 and I was 15, and so he wasn't much older than me. But as my father stated, he's a man and you're not a woman. So I don't care if it's a minute. You're not dating him. Well, I figured out ways to maneuver around that. But anyway, I get back to the States, and this is 5, 6 years later. This guy is the road manager for Donny Hathaway. And so I was on my way to law school, but I had also just got bitten by the bug of being creative. And so I was starting to write lyrics. And everybody I talked to said, nobody's going to, I mean, they're good, but nobody's going to do anything with them. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. They are going to do something with them because they're that good. And as things worked out, I ran into David, who introduced me to Donny and said, just meet him. And so I said to him, I'm a songwriter. Now, that was probably a stretch on a good day, right? I think I'd written maybe 2 songs. Long story short, he likes me. So he says to me, you're not going to be able to do anything from San Francisco. This is not a music center. You're either going to have to move to LA, move to New York, Nashville if you want to write country or western. So I said, I don't like LA, but I have family in New York, so I'll move to New York. So I moved to New York, but remember, I'm just graduated from school, getting ready to go to law school, recently gotten a divorce, and I have a baby. She's I don't even think she was a year old. And I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to juggle all this. But I always believe that there's no challenge that I can't figure a way how to overcome. So I called my mom and I said, listen, I want to do this songwriting thing. And I've met Donnie and he's going to help me, but I can't do it and be a responsible mother in New York City, even with my aunt there. This is just too much. So I want to work out a deal with you. If you give me a year, if I'm not gainfully employed, I will give up this dream and I will come home and take my daughter to raise her by myself. Otherwise, I'm going to come home and bring her back to New York. My mother said, I can't believe I spent all that money for you to go to school, and now you want to be a songwriter. But okay. So I dropped my daughter off in Seattle. I go to New York. I actually do get a contract, by the way. Within about 6 months. Yeah, I think a lot of what happens in life is what you believe. And so I believed I was going to get it, and I did. But I realized that even with the contract and getting paid, it was baby money, but it was legitimate. I had an agreement in place. I was a legitimate songwriter getting paid for that. I realized I couldn't raise my daughter in New York by myself. New York is just much. And so it sounds like I'm bragging, but one of the guys that I had come to know is a guy by the name of Carl Anderson, who was from Washington, D.C., and Carl was starring in Jesus Christ Superstar as Judas. So he says to me, move to D.C. There's a unit next door to me, and you need somebody to take care of you because you're so sweet and innocent. Somebody's going to hurt you, which wasn't true. But anyway. So.
Hey, it was a good rap.
It was a good rap. He was like a big brother to me. He was older than I was, just a generally nice guy. So I move in, but I haven't gone to get my daughter yet. And I'm realizing that even though I have the contract, the responsibility of all of that and the logistics, I wasn't sure I could pull off. And I couldn't run the risk of messing her life up because I was tripping. So I tell myself at 22, you're going to abort this mission temporarily. You're going to let them know, you're not going to renew your contract. You're going to fulfill your obligations. You're going to go back to Seattle. And when she turns 18, you can pick back up where you left off. Now, that was said by a 22-year-old who doesn't realize that by the time my daughter's 18, I'm going to be 100. And my goals and objectives are going to be very different than they were then. But I tell myself that, and it comforts me because I don't feel like I've really just given it up. I've postponed it. My daughter gets ready to go out west to go to college. And I'm now faced with, okay, I can go live my dream, except I realize that I am no longer that person who could live in a third-story walk-up studio apartment. I'm just not going to do it. I already own my own home. I wasn't going to do that, right? And then I thought, why would I have made a choice to do what I did, betting on futures that far out? What a mistake that was. And maybe I
should. I'm sorry, what was the mistake?
To bet on futures, 15, 18 years away from where I was, right? I was betting that I was going to be in the same mindset that I was when I made the choice. I wasn't that person anymore. I was a grown-up. I was an adult. I mean, a real one. And, but I still had a love for being creative. And I didn't know how I was going to make that work for me. at the time I was working at BET, mentioned it to my boss. I realized I no longer wanted to do that, but I still was creative. And I saw the traces of it in everything I did in corporate America. I never just kind of did it by the rules. I always figured out a way not to break the rules, but to finesse the rules so that it worked better for the employees and the corporation. But that was an opportunity for me to say to myself, when you make big choices, you set yourself up for big consequences. And I don't know that consequence was a right or a wrong, and nothing, it wasn't like I told a lie or anything. It was just I made a decision that impacted my life forever.
But
And
what wasn't the first decision that impacted your life forever was to get married and to have a kid.
yeah, I mean, you constantly are making choices
Right. That's my point.
throughout your life. And I think the point that I was trying to make is that I don't know realistically whether or not we always consider the choices and evaluate the consequences fully. At least I didn't at that time.
So to that point, what I think is that what we can't do is know what we don't know. And when you're young, everything is a thought, not based on information, not based on experience. Like you said, I want to be a songwriter. And at the time, I'm sure that when you said you want to be a songwriter, you knew you liked to write, but didn't know what songwriting was about, didn't know how much it was going to pay, didn't know the lifestyle that comes with it. So you didn't know what you didn't know. But what you did know is what you thought you wanted. And so a buddy of mine's always remind me when we were kids, because I knew from the time I was a teenager, I wanted to be a police. And so I knew that the career I wanted to have, but I didn't know much else about it. And so I remember us all talking. We was in the car one day, me and my two buddies, and I said, yeah, I'll probably work until I die. Because I didn't know anything about retirement. I didn't know that people literally retire and get paid not to work anymore.
You didn't know about that?
How would I know? Exposure creates access, creates opportunity. That I don't know what I don't know. I didn't know that it comes with retirement. I didn't know what retirement was. I didn't know what Social Security was.
Okay.
So again, fast forward 30, 35, 40 years, when I'm saying, because I was first to retire, you're like, oh, I thought you said you was going to work until you die. I was stupid. Why should I keep working when now I have earned close to the same salary to not work as opposed to working? So I'm armed with different information. The concept of youthful indiscretions and stuff like that, so that's why going back when I talk about consequences or the context of consequences, that 13-year-old example, I knew I was lying. It wasn't a matter of not knowing what I do. I knew when he put us in a tournament at my high school that it was at my high school.
And it didn't occur to you at that point to go.
I was young and stupid. Again, therein lies the difference.
Yeah.
So that's where the consequences teach you to think through your decisions.
Okay, but what about now? You're not young and stupid. You're not 13 anymore. But every day you make choices.
That's
You
right.
make choices about turning left and going on 214 as opposed to going on Surface Street. You make a series of choices, some of which seem to be pretty inane. I mean, they're not significant or they don't appear to be in the moment. Um, but could be life altering. I think oftentimes, at least for myself, I don't consider, I know the things, I'm mature enough now to know the things that are serious. And I try to weigh the consequences there. But for things that I think don't matter, do I turn left and go this way or turn right and take and go another way? Really contemplate that very much. I mean, because I
But I
don't think
think you do. Yeah, you do. It's not random. See, because, for example, if you were to leave your house to go to the grocery store, the first time you left your house to go to the grocery store, you had to get directions to the grocery store. And the directions were go out, go up Fifth Street, turn left, go down 3 blocks. So now you know where the grocery store is. But what we do is we forget the originating point. That I go by these P's, that prior planning prevents piss poor performance. And if it's predictable, it's preventable. That almost everything we do in life, we know is going to happen. You know, when you wake up, you're going to brush your teeth. That's why you get toothpaste. That's why you get a toothbrush. I need some Listerine. Make sure I get that. So you don't just wake up and brush your teeth. You prepare to brush your teeth. That, you know, if you're going to work, uh, you got work clothes that you went and bought specifically for work. So it's not as random as you think, that those things you predicted in advance, planned for, so that you can be better at it. And those are people who are probably more successful. Those are probably people who are successful in taking care of their business. Like, for example, I'm not going to spend all my money and not be able to pay my bills. I know how much I get paid. I know how much my bills are. So you plan to do that. So I do, I don't think things are as random as we make them. I think we forget we forget how we got there. Sometimes you watch somebody work and you like, wow, they're really good at what they do. And they seem to be able to do what they're doing with their eyes closed. But we don't give credit for
the
that first
preparation.
time, like right now, that that we're on this platform where, as you get used to it, the people who come on, it's our first time experiencing it. And if we don't have a little bit of understanding of technology, it can be like dumbfounding.
Okay, go ahead.
I just don't think I don't think life is as random as we try to make it.
So you're not one of those people that believes that um, there are coincidences.
I think there's coincidence. I think there are coincidences, but it's not random. For example, that if you bump into somebody, uh, that it's not a coincidence that you at the store that you went to, because that's where you always go. Now, why was the other person there that you bumped into makes it the coincidence. But you was there because that's where you go to the store. If all of a sudden you say, I need to buy a dress, so now you're gonna go to Macy's, and you weren't planning to go to Macy's, then yeah, that could be the coincidence, because I wasn't even planning on being at Macy's. I just changed my mind at the last second, come get a dress. So it's a coincidence now that you ran into that person, because you didn't plan
To be there.
initially to Macy's.
You and I have talked about this. I look at life a little bit more serendipitous than that. Um, Sometimes I think things happen not so much because I planned them, but because there are other forces that control things in life, and that they just made some decisions and moved me to a certain spot on the chessboard, and that's what happened. Um, I just was thinking about, you always tease me about my street creds, and I'm going to use this opportunity to tout my street creds right now.
To tell the world that you have real street cred. Now you're gonna tell this story, and when you tell a story and you give your street cred, everybody might not give you the street cred, but go ahead.
See, they might have given me the street cred if you hadn't said anything about it. But of course, you minimize the impact of it now, so you're probably not going to want to.
Okay.
I told you the story about coming home from work. This is 5 or 6 years ago. And it just so happened that my driver's license had expired. Probably a smidge over a month before I get stopped. I don't even know what law enforcement calls it, but I'm going through this intersection, and there's cop cars on like 3 of the corners. They're stopping cars. I don't know what they're looking for, but they're stopping cars. So I get stopped by a young officer, and he says, "Ma'am, can I see your registration and your driver's license?" So I say, can I get out of the car? And because I always keep my purse in the back seat. I just do. So he said yes. And I got out and got my stuff, and I handed it to him, not thinking at all. And he says, "Ma'am, your driver's license has expired." And I said it has, because the licenses last for 10 years, and I don't use my driver's license anymore. It's not like I'm writing checks and I'm having to pull the license out. I rarely even look at it. So I try to explain, and it wasn't that he wasn't believing me. That didn't have anything to do with it. I was in the wrong. And I don't know if he had a bad evening. I don't know what the circumstances were for him, but he was not trying to hear any excuses from me. And a day past expiration was expired. Never mind that it was barely a month, but it was expired, and he was right. It was expired. So I don't ever challenge law enforcement ever. I don't care what they say. Whatever you tell me to do, that's what I'm going to do. So he says to me, "Hold up a minute, pull your car over to the curb across the intersection and park it." So I do, and I hear him, because it's like springtime. It's not hot, and people are sitting outside in that neighborhood. And so he talks to the other officer. The other officer looks at him and says, "You're kidding, right?" This is what the officer says. And he says, "No, I'm not. I'm going to arrest her." And the other officer said, "For an expired driver's license? No, you're not." And he says, "I am." And I don't know what it means to go to jail. So I'm like terrified. And the not the first officer, but the second officer says, "Well, you can't arrest her. You got to call and get a female officer here so that they can take her into custody." And that's, "You can do all that for a driver's license?" He says yes. So they make a call, and about 10 minutes later, another car pulls up, and a female officer's there, and they huddle, the 4 of them, because she's got a partner too. And I hear everybody saying to this cop, "You got to be kidding me. It's Friday night, and it's getting ready to be ugly, and you're having me over here to arrest her for an expired driver's license." And he says yes. So I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to go to jail. And as you know, I at one point in my life was doing a lot of recruiting, and I was working with public safety professionals, FBI, Secret Service, local law enforcement. And I thought, oh my God, it's going to kill my business because I'm a criminal now. So sure enough, they put handcuffs on me. I am embarrassed beyond imagination. And the people that are sitting out on their front stoop are watching this like they can't believe this is going on. I get in the back of the car, and they take me to the precinct. and I'm sliding up and down the seat because I'm not locked in. So we get there and they pull into, it was kind of like a garage or something that ends up when you come out of when you get out of the car, you're in this cage. And there's a woman in the cage with me who is drunk. I mean, she can barely stand up. And I'm terrified. And so there's a sergeant that's facing the cage. I guess he was the sergeant on duty, I'm assuming. And so he looks at me and he looks at the officer who brought me in and he says, "Oh, what is this?" And she said, oh, Brian Jordan, you know how he is. And he says, "What does she do?" And she says, "She has an expired driver's license." And he says, "You're kidding me."
For the record, it wasn't Brian Jordan who arrested you.
No, I'm using your name
in case someone's listening and think, the reason I had said something before
you,
was
right?
Because it was me. No, I am not the person who arrested
you. It was hypothetical. And so the woman that's in this cage with me, I don't even know what the cage is called, but that's what I call it. She is hollering and screaming and cussing the sergeant out, and she's telling him to get her out of there. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is Friday night and I have no idea how long I'm going to be here. So I'm not there long because the sergeant says to me, "I can't leave you in there. I can't do it. It's going to get busy in here and it wouldn't be safe. I'm going to move you to a cell." And I'm like, oh, now, my God, I'm going to be in a real cell. So they take me in and he says to me, he was really, really nice. He said, I'm gonna close the door to the cell because I have to. But there was another door that the cell was inside this room with a couple of other cells. He said, but I'm going to leave the door open, partially open, cracked. So you can see me sitting at the front desk. And if you need anything, just call and I'll come help you. So I thought, okay, how long do I have to stay here? And he said, well, until the arresting officer gets off shift. He has to come back and fill out some paperwork or something. I don't know what the procedure is. But I love to tell that story because I do think that it gives me street creds because I did go to jail. Now he gets back and I paid like a $50 fine and they let me go. But those were a series of choices that I also made. And while it wasn't, according to you, a real crime, it was, I broke the law. And it was my responsibility to know when my driver's license was going to expire. And while maybe it's understandable, that doesn't make it okay. And so I told the people I needed to tell the next work day, and they were like, "Oh, please, that's just nothing." But to me, it was, and I look at the fact that happened to me because of choices. It wasn't choices that I deliberately. It wasn't like I said, "Oh, I'm not going to go get my driver's license renewed." But when you decide that you're not going to pay attention to something that you have an obligation to stay on top of, that's a choice too. And there were consequences that came of that I couldn't pivot around. I couldn't talk my way out of. I couldn't be sweet and have them say, "Oh, we're not going to arrest you." No, didn't work. And so I think that through life, there's opportunities every day, a series of them, where you're making decisions. And Sometimes you don't think they're important, and the impact of those decisions can alter your life.
100.
And I don't, especially in this microwave era that we're in now, I'm always concerned that people mistakenly don't consider everything. I don't think, maybe I'm wrong and maybe I'm a little naive, but I don't think people deliberately decide that they're going to make a bad decision so they can see how they can mess up their life. I think people inadvertently do stuff that they haven't thought about. Now I know you don't think that,
No,
but
that's not true. It's
okay.
not. It's not that I don't think that. I think the decisions are conscious. I think that for many, because they've survived the bad decisions, they don't think consequences are going to ever come. So
Mm.
they they tend to repeat those bad decisions, thinking it's going to be okay. You know, and again, from the simplest things like, oh well,
Like my street creds.
I'm going to give you your street creds because you tell such an
I
impassioned story about
so because I want them so
yours.
bad.
But no, just simple going back to school, that to cut class, that to miss a lesson and you still get a C or a B. So it teaches you, I can miss class every now and then. I'm still passing.
But Brian, you're using examples where there are obvious predictable outcomes. What
To
about
make the
this?
point. To
But
make
wait
that
a minute.
point. Go
But
ahead.
wait a minute. I know you grew up in Chicago, and when it was time for you to figure out where you were going to go to college, I don't know how you made the decision, but you made a decision to come to DC and go to school here, correct? What if you had chosen to go somewhere else? It wouldn't have been necessarily a bad decision. It would have been a different decision. Okay.
Correct.
It wasn't a crime. It wasn't, you lied. You just decided to go to Morehouse instead of Howard. Okay. And you met a whole different series of people, and you may or may not have ever gone to work in DC. You may not have ever lived here. And there would be consequences that occurred because of your choice of school.
So, but in your scenario, I wouldn't call those consequences because
What do you call
that
these outcomes?
outcomes, because a consequence is more of
I should have
a,
known.
re, a reaction to that. For many years, the movie It's a Wonderful Life comes on
Mm-hmm.
around Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably 7, 8 years ago that I finally watched the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And it hit me, just like what you was just saying, that I was the first one in my family to go away to college. So I left Chicago to come to Howard in DC. That after I graduated, my younger brother came out here to get a fresh start to live with me. That ultimately his girlfriend from Chicago came out to be with him. Subsequently, they had a baby, and my mother came out to help them with the
Help them.
baby. After my mother came out to help with the baby, my sister said, I want to come out. So she came out and brought her kids with her. So that decision to come to Howard created the outcome for that chain of family members to leave Chicago and start a new life
Can,
because of that decision.
can we, for the sake of this conversation, interchange periodically consequences and outcomes, because I think
Sure.
the reason one might choose the term outcome is because um, the impact is not perceived as being a negative.
Correct. And I think consequences are usually perceived as a negative. Like, for
Okay.
example, that if you come in late, you're going to be on punishment.
Okay.
That if you don't renew your license, you can get arrested. That if you don't show up for work, you can get fined. So those consequences is, for me, generally are repercussions for your actions, where
So the example that I
outcomes,
used before was not a consequence. The
which
whole
one?
moving to New York to be a songwriter, that wasn't really, that wasn't a
Agree. That
consequence. That was
no, that
an
was not.
outcome.
That was an outcome.
Okay. All right.
That was
All
an
right. I just
outcome.
want to make sure that we're tracking on the same page.
No, we are, and so, because I think that when you're having a conversation about consequences, to me, are more about ramifications. What are ramifications for your actions? From the example you started with for yourself, in terms of major decisions, you, you your story is the fact that in your early 20s you made the decision to get married, and the outcomes is you had a daughter. Those aren't consequences or ramifications. Those are outcomes of your decision. And again, to go back to you choosing Howard, that there is an outcome and there's a ramification. That my head coach had told the coach at Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri, I can get him to come to your school, and if I get him, I can get two or three other guys from the team to all come to your school. Well, the coach from Howard who was recruiting me, when I called him to say, hey, haven't heard from you, you guys still interested? He said, oh, the coach told us you were going to go to Lincoln. I said, no, that's not the fact. Matter of fact, you don't have to go through him anymore. You can talk to me directly. And so I end up talking directly with the coach, coming to Howard, and my high school coach never spoke to me again from that moment on. That's a ramification and consequence of the decision I made to choose not to let him be my representative and to represent myself in order to come to Howard, because I knew that had the possibility of a better outcome. That everybody said, oh, Howard's an academic school, that Lincoln is going to college. Howard is going to the top HBCU in the country. So that my choice was an outcome. The ramifications was my coach never speaking to me again.
You and I do this a lot. We get wrapped around semantics, and I guess in my mind they're both outcomes and not consequences. I mean, it would have been maybe a consequence if you were going to have to still be at your high school another year or two, and as a result, he didn't let you play football or he didn't let you play any sports at all because he was mad at you. That really wasn't a consequence, was it?
But it is a consequence when someone, like, as the quarterback, you and your head coach are like synonymous. You're
Like a
relaying
marriage.
to the team. Yeah, you're relaying to the team. The only person he's talking to is you, and you're talking to the team on his behalf. And so you guys got to be on the same page. And we have these 2 seasons of this relationship, and then all of a sudden, because I didn't do what he wanted me to do, that he chose not to speak to me again in life.
Well, Brian, could it be not that you made that choice, but could it be the method in which you went about it?
No, I mean, I'm sorry. The reason I say no is because that the method in which he went about it, he didn't tell me, he didn't tell he didn't tell me that he told a school that I was interested in that I wasn't interested in it. That he undermined it, he was undermining my choice, possibly because he was going to get something out of me doing what he wanted.
And I understand you reversing that outcome. I do. But is it possible that you could have still had a conversation with him that would have minimized the impact that it had on your relationship?
Sure, but again, we're talking about a 17-year-old. We're not talking about the 60-year-old. We're talking about a 17-year-old with regard to a grown man who you defer to. It's like going. You told a story about your decision to go to New York. You said you went and talked to your mother,
Only because I need for her to do something.
but you didn't talk to your father.
That's an interesting story. We can talk about that right now too.
But before you even tell the story, you said your dad's in the military.
Yes.
That's a different relationship.
Why is it a different relationship?
Because you know how military people are, and the conversation with him is going to be totally different from the conversation with your mother.
It is, but not in the way that you think. I was definitely a daddy's girl. I mean, my mother was just an aside as far as I was concerned. I went to him about everything because I thought he was the greatest man ever to have lived on the planet.
But you deferred to him, right?
No. We had a different kind of relationship because I was a daddy's girl, but he was a girl's daddy, and he thought I walked on water too. So I recognized that fairly early on in my growing up, and I decided that I liked his decisions way better than I liked hers. And so, when I got to be a teenager, I asked her a couple of times, and she was always negative. Nah, you don't need to go. I mean, boys are going to be there, and you don't need to be going to that. And I was like, oh, I'm really not feeling her. So I decided at 14, I'm not asking her. I'm going to ask him because he's reasonable, and he's probably going to let me go. And he usually did. And then she would be hot and bothered because she would say to me, you didn't ask if you could go. And I would say, yes, I did. I asked Dad. Which, what's she going to say? They both had power in that house, right? So I know I never overheard the conversation, but I know that they had one because subsequently it was a new rule in the house. And
go ask your mom.
Yeah, and I said to him, well, I gotta ask her. You the man in the house. Can't you make the decision?
You gonna play on his.
Well, come on. At 14, you're learning how to do that with men anyway, right?
Yes.
And with your dad, it's safe because they love you and they're never gonna harm you. So I said, why do I have to ask her? You're the man. You make you have all the responsibility and you make all the decisions. And he said, no, that's not how that works. We're a partnership. And I said, but can't you make a decision and have her just go along with it? And he said, sometimes. I said, well, are you afraid of her? He said, yes. And you need to be afraid of her too. And I was like, you're not afraid of anything. And he's like, I'm afraid of your mother. So from then on, I had to come up with a different strategy because the first strategy wouldn't work. But, I think what we're talking about here is maturing. And I know that it's one thing when we talk about decisions that you make at 13. you're a kid. And most of the time, unless it's a crime or something really tragic in the moment, those are not going to be consequences. They'll be outcomes. They're not normally, or hopefully they're not going to alter your life. But I think as you get older, and I don't mean the things that are choices where you end up going to jail or not. I'm talking about where relationships don't work out because you made this decision versus that decision.
Yes.
And I don't know that people. I mean, when I talk to friends of mine who have been in relationships and have done something foolish, they weren't thinking about it in that way.
They weren't thinking about the consequences.
They weren't thinking about the consequences.
Not the outcomes, not thinking about the consequences. The outcome is, as a guy, you see this attractive woman and she comes on to you and she says, "Hey, let's go to dinner." And you say, okay. Well, the outcome is that you go to dinner. You don't think that you hurting your partner. You don't think that you're breaking down the trust. You don't think that it should be any ramifications until
No,
the
look, stop for a second.
consequences.
Do you think about that at all when you say yes? Do you really think
Now, as you get older,
but when you were younger, you didn't?
so that I try to operate under the premise of how would I feel if this was done to my mother or my sister?
How would you feel if it was done to you?
Never thought about that. As a guy, I ain't worried about it. Remember, as I said earlier, I make decisions I can live with, good, bad, or indifferent. The difference in maturing is not whether you can live with it, but are you going to hurt somebody else?
And does that matter to you?
Yes, and that's maturity. That's when consequences matter.
That's even when outcomes matter.
Yes. So I guess, and that's why I don't think it's a difference in semantics. I think we need to be clear in the differentiation because outcomes often center around how does it make you feel? That cheating, you get to have sex with somebody. The outcome is
Wait a minute. We went to having sex because you just went to dinner? You made a series of choices. A series of choices.
It's the dinner which started it.
No.
It's the dinner.
No.
I'm sorry. It's the agreeing to go to dinner that started it.
See, I disagree with that.
Okay, tell me yours.
I think that there were a series of choices that were made. I think agreeing to go to dinner was one of them. But all throughout the evening, you made subsequent choices.
Yeah, and so that's my point. And each choice was giving you an outcome that you was okay with. We're just eating dinner. That we're just having great conversation. We're just hanging out. We're just going to go back to my place and watch TV.
Yeah,
we're just watching TV. Again, all of the things that your outcomes, if it was simply that, and so that, like for example, in that scenario, every decision, every step is an outcome. There's a movie that I often reference. It's Chris Rock. I Think I Love My Wife. You ever see that movie?
No, because I'm not really into comedies.
Oh, okay. But so in the movie, Chris Rock is married, and he runs into an old friend, Kerry Washington, and Kerry Washington is he's married with kids, and his wife is going through postpartum and don't have time for him, and so he runs into Kerry Washington, and she's just an old friend. But what happens is that the first step was he didn't tell his wife that he ran into her. Then he didn't tell his wife that she called him at work. Then he didn't tell his wife that she came by to see him. And so all of these things kept at all these outcomes. And then, she asked him to come go someplace with him. And so he couldn't get away. So he went home and he asked his wife, "What's for dinner?" She said, "Chicken." He said, "Chicken, chicken, chicken again. I'm tired of chicken. I want some duck." And he leaves the house as if he's going to get some duck, but he's going simply to hang out with Kerry Washington. And at no point during this scenario is it ever sexual, but it's fun. The outcomes is he's feeling youthful and all these different things. And then
it's interesting that for men, much more than women, their sense of wrongness is directly connected with sex. Where for women, I think that the intimacy that they shared didn't have to have sex.
That was going to be my point. My point.
You're going to make that point.
Yes, because in the end, that she invited him over to the house. He got there. But when he got there, she was in her bra and panties. And then next thing you know, he was okay. I'm ready to do this. And he goes and get ready to take off his tie. And it reminded him of how he used to play with his kid with his tie around it. Because he looks in the mirror and the tie is around his head. And he sees an image of how he was playing with his child with the tie around his head and says, "Hey, I can't do this. I got to go." Well, when it's all said and done, he never slept with her. But everything he did in between the first contact and that moment was as much intimacy that if she knew about, that would be worse than if
she would be devastated.
Met her on day one. That's right. If he met her on day one and had sex, then it would probably be more understandable.
I don't know if I agree with better than. But
well, let me say why. Because that, and again, I will acknowledge that for women, that they will take an act of sex and say that's the ultimate.
Mm-hmm.
Again, in theory, what I'm saying is that what happens is that what's worse, the intimacy or the fact that you got drunk and had sex with somebody?
The intimacy.
That's my point. So that's what I mean about if he got drunk and had sex and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I was drunk. I just don't know what was going on. Next thing you know, this is where I was." But when you intentionally lie, deceit, manipulate, that type of situation where all you're worried about is your outcomes, that's the intimacy, that's the violation.
Well, it's interesting because I think, we were talking earlier about grown people and they make decisions about stuff that a 13-year-old is incapable of making a decision about because they don't know anything. But I think when you're grown up, the choice to get drunk is a decision as well.
Absolutely.
And so if you know you're in a situation that could be compromising and that your instincts might be impacted negatively and you just might do the wrong thing, your choice to go ahead and get drunk, to me, says that you've evaluated all the circumstances and you're okay with any potential outcome because you know what the likelihood of those are.
Which is why I don't drink.
Okay, fair enough. But
I agree with what you're saying. And like I said, I go back to, if it's predictable, it's preventable. That if it's predictable, if you get drunk, who knows what you're going to do? Whether you're going to end up driving a car drunk, whether you're going to end up in a situation where you get into a fight, all these different things because you decided to get drunk, and that was predictable. So the thing is that do you have a do you have somebody who's going to be there to help you if you do that? Like, people say, hey, you're the designated driver. Uh, Again, those are prior planning prevents piss poor performance. Those are things that for me help me avoid negative consequences. That helps me in understanding that my decisions can have consequences. And it doesn't make me perfect because I'm still going to fail at something, but at least I can minimize the impact and make
Or when
decisions
you
that
make
I can
the
live with.
decision, you decide that even if this goes left, I don't want it to,
Good,
but if it goes
good, bad, or
left,
indifferent.
I can live with it. Okay,
I
so
could, like I started with when I said that it's not the good, bad, or indifferent. That's not my issue with the decision. My issue is, can I live with the process that got me there?
okay, I want to ask you one final question before we kind of wrap this up. If you're comfortable responding, have you ever been in a situation where you did make a choice? And I don't mean at 13. I mean grown up Brian, where the outcome was not good. It hurt a relationship. It whatever it was. How were you? Were you in a position where you had to make a decision? Now, okay, here's the outcome. What do I do now?
Yes.
You gonna share that, or you just gonna say yes?
No, I heard your phone ringing.
Spam call. Um,
So, yeah. So here's the thing that late in my career, that a friend called who had gotten arrested.
like me.
Absolutely. Same type situation.
Okay.
That when I simply went to try to find out what was going on, that I went to the station, they explained what was going on, that explained that they were charging a felony.
A
So
felony for driver's license?
no, it
Oh,
was
I was gonna
that
say.
what happened was the way it was explained to me, that there was an argument that led to a disagreement. When I got to the station, the police officer said no, it was a domestic situation where this
Altercation.
person was the aggressor, and so that they was being charged with domestic violence. And I was like, hey, ain't nothing I can do, so forth and so on. Well, at this point, told everybody, hey, look, you know, got it, so forth and so on. Well, it was at a point where the administration changed and they wanted to get rid of me anyway. So they accused me of interfering with the arrest. That I, in turn, had to get an attorney to represent me because they were accusing me of interfering with an arrest, and that as a result, I got demoted and end up costing me uh, more than $50,000. That in the end, it was proven that I did not interfere, did not do anything, but my reputation was tarnished because of the allegation. And this is why I say all the time that sometimes the allegation The allegation is page 1. The result is page 65. Everybody remembers the allegation, but no one remembers the result, because the result was, hey, I'm sorry, my bad, no harm, no foul.
No,
So
much harm,
uh,
much
to
foul.
me,
Yeah.
to me, and again, that all because you're trying to be empathetic and look out for somebody.
So did you make a decision to just let it go? Or did you decide to take some steps?
That, like I said, I hired an attorney
Okay, so you did
to,
take you to correct the situation.
yes, and so the attorney was able to represent me and correct the situation. But the harm was done.
Well,
The harm
not
was done.
really.
Oh,
Why?
yeah. I was demoted, and ultimately, when at one time I was the longest serving assistant chief in the history of the Metropolitan Police Department.
Okay.
As a result of that, I was subsequently demoted back to captain. So that's a 4-step drop. That it cost me $65,000 to defend myself. That you can't get that assistant chief back. You can't get that $65,000 back.
Yeah,
All you can get back is your reputation.
you could have gotten the
And
money back too.
well,
I didn't know you at the
you
time. That's what I did. So,
but,
but
but
I
the
hear
the
you.
money was the attorney fees and the loss of pay from the demotion. And the reason you can't get the demotion back is because that everything above captain is discretionary. It's in the law. So to your point as an adult, is that even though you can make the right decision, that sometimes you don't have control
Oh,
over
the
the
outcome.
outcomes. You can have control over the consequences
Sometimes.
sometimes. That's where you have a shot. You have a shot at the consequences. You don't necessarily have a shot at the outcome. In that, the demotion and the loss of pay associated with it, so forth and so on.
And hindsight's always 2020, but when you think about the fact that there was a moment when you made a decision, I'm sure, in good conscience, you were helping a friend. And so that was what, helped you determine the steps you were going to take. But sometimes, I mean, the situations that the examples we're using are not really the kind that I wanted us to go into, because I think that there are a series. I mean, what made me want to bring up this topic is because I have these kind of meaty conversations with all my friends, because that's kind of like where I live. And I hear people tell me about relationships where they've made decisions to do something that in their mind at the time was innocent. It
For
wasn't.
example,
Let me think if I can use an example that's not going to be harmful to anybody. Okay. I had a girlfriend who she'd been dating a guy, and he was pretty non-committal, sort of. He didn't want to commit, but he wanted her to be committed. You know how that works. I,
absolutely.
I want you to live a certain kind of reaction to me, but I don't want to be held to the same standards. So she said to me, I decided to tell him that I was going away for my birthday. She didn't say that she was going away with me or with a bunch of girls. She didn't. She just didn't say. She just said
Was she actually going away?
yes. But she was going away with some women, with some girls.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't clarify that to him. She just gave him the I'm going away. And I think he asked, But remember, he had kind of jammed himself up too, because he was, I don't want to be committed. And so when you don't want to be committed, you can't really ask a whole lot of questions, because that ain't what this is supposed to be, right? I guess, well, he asked, and I wasn't there, so I don't know what she actually said, but she told me that she didn't really give him an answer.
So, and again, I think we have touched on this, because here's the thing: if you take that scenario, that he was honest and he didn't want to be committed, so it started with his honesty.
Okay, because this is a whole nother series that you and I are going to have to cover, because I know
No,
I'm going to
but again,
Go ahead.
let's go with this. Let's go with this scenario though.
He was
That
honest.
he was honest, and that based on what you're saying,
Mhm.
he was honest in that he let her know he didn't want to be committed.
Right.
That she wanted a commitment, so her goal or her objective then was to be, for lack of better words, manipulative, to try to make him jealous
Or something.
or something. So she wasn't being honest.
Well, she was being honest.
I'm sorry. So is a lie by omission honesty?
She didn't lie. She didn't.
I said by omission.
Well,
That she didn't. She didn't say I'm going with my girlfriends.
She didn't. But was she obligated to do that?
I'm not talking about the obligation. The omission had intent.
I love this. Okay.
Didn't you say?
Yes, she didn't tell him, and she knew when she didn't tell him the conclusion he would probably draw. Yes.
No, and according to your scenario,
he did ask. He asked, and she didn't respond, or at least that's what she told me.
Again, so what is that? Is that a quote unquote lie of omission?
I would say it was a lie of omission if, in fact, she was going with a guy and didn't say.
So what? Again, because if she was going with a guy or she was going with a girlfriend, it's both irrelevant, because you already said they're not committed. That if it was, the point becomes, and this is why I started with the 13-year-old scenario, because the point becomes, if you start from a point of truth, then the point becomes, can you handle the outcomes or consequences of the truth?
Well, let me play the scenario out for you.
Okay.
So she says she doesn't give him an answer. I don't know what he said to the non-response or the vagueness of the response, because I'm only going on her version of the story, right? So she gets back and she discovers that while she's gone, he has been emotional about what he perceived potentially was happening. Now, this is still a guy who doesn't want a committed relationship. Okay, so far, just bear with me for a minute. So she calls me up maybe a couple of weeks later, and she says his whole demeanor toward her has changed. Are you nodding your head? Because I'm going to be interested to see what you say. She says his whole demeanor has changed. He talks to her, but it's abbreviated. And he's, how does she describe it? She said he was just casual and short.
Yep.
And so then she calls me maybe a month later, and she says, we're not talking anymore.
Absolutely.
And I said to her, what happened? And she said he um, told her that he hadn't been talking to her because he wasn't sure how to say what he was getting ready to say to her. And what he was getting ready to say to her was, which is, I think, also manipulative, I don't want a commitment, and you obviously do. Now, I don't know how he got there. Why didn't he just say what was that I'm upset by what happened? Because that's really what it was. But that's kind of not how it got conveyed to her. But anyway, this is what he says to her. And so they stopped talking to each other. And then altogether, no more, nothing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she tells me a couple of months later that he's following her on social media. And she's like, why are you following me on social media? You're not talking to me. What I'm doing and what I'm posting should be irrelevant to you. And so I said to her, boy, what an example of a series of decisions that I believe in the moment were never intended to go off the rails. I don't think either party wanted that. I think some decisions were made and an outcome, consequences happened.
Can you tell me from your perspective, because you said some decisions were made, tell me the decision that you're referring to that you say decisions was made.
Well, I think she made the decision to manipulate.
Okay.
She wanted to get a reaction from him. That was first.
That's right.
He made a decision when she didn't respond.
No, he had a reaction.
That's still a decision.
Again, we agree it's a decision. The point becomes is that he...
Let me finish. You asked me a question. So he reacts and does not stop her in the moment and say, hold up. I just asked you a question. Can you give me an answer? He didn't do that. He lets her go off. She comes back to a whole new relationship now.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them made the decision when they saw that it was off the rails to not have a sit down.
Okay, can I respond?
Sure. Ooh.
So I'm
seeing a visceral look on your face that I've not seen before. So okay, talk to me so I can hear where you're coming from.
So first, and I can only go on the information you gave me.
That's all.
Prior to the point in which she decided to tell him she was going out of town, that while he wasn't quote unquote willing to commit, they were progressing in a relationship.
Yes.
So
at least that was my perception.
And let's go with that perception.
Okay.
So that if he's progressing in a relationship and she wants him to commit, he's trying to decide, is this somebody I can commit to?
Okay, let me stop you for a second, because this is one of the things that I find curious about men.
Okay, let's go with it.
If you haven't made the decision, why do you need to speak on it? Because if you tell me that you don't
when
want...
you say speak on it, what do you mean? That did he answer a question, or did he tell her?
No. I think she asked him. I don't know. I don't know how the conversation...
So if she asked him, he was honest. And again, this is the point, that she asked him a question and he didn't lie to her. He was honest in saying, I'm not ready to commit.
No, I think what she asked him was, are you involved with anyone? I think that's fair. I think that's what she asked him.
And again,
he said no. He said no. I'm not. I'm not ready for that, or something like that. I just don't understand why you would first address a matter like that if you continue, if the plan was to proceed to determine what you wanted to do.
I don't understand what you just said.
Okay. It would seem to me that if you were dating someone that both parties would know early on, nobody's in a position, you don't even know who you're going out with, really. You've been introduced to their representative, and you won't meet the real person until some time from now.
Let's go with that.
Okay.
So go ahead.
So nobody knows what the outcome's going to be.
But let's go back to some of the things I've said to you. One is that now we're talking about adult informed people, that you're not making a decision to commit because she's got a nice booty or she's got a pretty face. That the decision to commit is a thought out, evaluated decision, and understanding that people have representatives, that you have to get past the representative to decide, have you met the real person and do you want to commit to this real person? Are we on the same page so far?
So far.
So in the scenario that you gave, that whether she asked or, however it came out, he did not mislead, he did not misrepresent. He said, I'm not ready to commit. That she didn't want to leave because of that. She wanted to speed up his decision to commit. So she decided to manipulate him into speeding up his decision. Are we still on the same page?
I don't know that I'm 100% in agreement with you. I don't know that she wanted him to make a commitment, but I think, and I did not ask her this, but I think that oftentimes when men and women have different languages, generally, and I think they'd been going out for 6 months, something like that. I think she wanted to just know how he felt about her.
And she didn't ask him. She didn't ask him, how do you feel about me? She decided to create a scenario to create an outcome.
So she could see.
This is how our conversation come full circle.
Okay.
That she now, as an adult, as an informed adult, that she thought that she could make a decision that would direct his outcome. And so she decided to tell him in cryptic terms that she was going to go away, which, good, bad, indifferent, true or false, was designed to leave him the idea that it could have been with another man. Do I have that right?
Yes.
So at that point, now that he's making a decision, do I want to be with somebody who, where we are in this situation, still wants to go away with another man? And his answer is no. So therefore, when she comes back, the consequences of her doing that manipulative step may allowed him to make the decision, no, this isn't somebody I want to commit to.
Okay, but wait a minute. That's not the end of the story.
I'm getting to the point in which you've given me so far.
Okay,
where
go ahead.
That when she comes back, he's a different person.
He's a different person.
His conversation is short.
Yeah.
That he's not trying to be as engaging. I'm saying at this point, based on the fact that she led him to believe she was going away with another man, made his decision about how interested in her he was.
Okay. Okay. So
So,
at that point, they make a decision. They're going to go their separate ways.
yep,
Or he made the decision pretty much. And
he made the decision that he's not going to commit to her.
he also made the decision that he was going to basically tell her that, um,
He's not going to commit to her.
yes. And she decided, I guess we're not going to see each other anymore.
And so then to the point that don't mean he stopped following her on social media, because again, as a guy, it didn't mean he was no longer attracted to her. It didn't mean that he no longer liked her. It didn't mean that he it just meant this isn't somebody I'm going, because now, whether you've been divorced, whether you've been lived with somebody, all these different things, you know how far you can go with this person, because this person has shown you in your mind that they will go and see somebody else when they don't get their way. So that's not somebody
But she
you
didn't
want.
go see somebody else.
But she made him think that. It doesn't make a difference whether she actually did it. In his mind, that
She
whether
was
she did or
capable of
not,
doing it.
that's right.
Okay.
And she led him to believe that she was capable of doing it. So
But
now he was making a decision about the person.
okay. My point is, all that whole series of choices,
Outcomes, choices and outcomes.
choices had outcomes, consequences, whichever word you want to
Absolutely.
use. And
They had a both.
they both. Okay. So I said to her, because now he's kind of acting like, I don't want it to be over. And she's saying to me, I don't want it to be over either. And I said, just imagine if the two of you, way back when this whole thing went down, had made the decision to not play the game and had made the decision to have that awkward conversation. As vulnerable as it may have made you, you wanted some information, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you should have asked him, because that way you all could have had
Ask him what?
how he felt about her, because that's what you wanted to know.
No, that's not what you want to know.
How do you know that, Brian?
Because you said it. Again, that
She
there is a
wanted.
difference.
I said she wanted to know how he felt about her, which is why she manipulated.
No.
Yes.
Lynn, and again, this is just the male-female tape. That she didn't want to know how he felt about her. She wanted a commitment.
I don't want to say that.
That's your word. I didn't bring up the word commitment. You said that he told her
Right.
that he didn't want to be committed.
But I don't know that the manipulation was to get him to commit. I think the manipulation...
Did the manipulation occur as a result of him telling her he didn't want to commit?
Months later. Yes.
The point becomes that we agreed that the manipulation was, or maybe we don't, was the central impetus, him telling her he wasn't looking for a commitment, or was the central impetus the manipulation and making him believe she was going out of town with somebody?
Honestly, I didn't ask
Based
those
on
questions.
Based on the conversation.
I did not get the impression that she was looking for him to make a commitment in that moment.
What did you believe her impetus?
I thought she wanted to get a better sense of just kind of where they were. Let me ask you a real good question, because this is one of the things that tends to happen in male-female conversation, because we can be black and white and you guys can be color. That from your scenario, your take is she wanted to get clarity in how he felt about her. Yes.
Do I have that right?
Yes.
Anywhere in this conversation, did you tell me, did she tell you those words?
I don't believe I said that.
Right. And so what I'm saying
You
is
just
that
asked me what did I think, though, not what did
no,
she
no,
say.
right.
Okay.
Because what happens is that you filled in the blanks.
Don't we always do that? Don't people do
No,
that?
men, that's the black and white. And you've been saying, if she asks him, how do you feel about me? Then he can answer that question. He wasn't asked that.
But you know what? And you're right. You're right about that. Men and women do have a different language, and it to me it's a mistake for either party to dig their heels in and play it by the book.
But it's
Because
not digging your
it
heels
is.
in, Lynn.
Yes,
Lynn,
Brian, you
let me try this, Lynn. Because under your scenario, and this is what I said before. This is how it comes back full circle. You're only accountable for what you know. You cannot be accountable for what someone thinks you know. And that if we agree, we speak different languages, that a man, you've heard this over and over, a man can't read a woman's mind. If she wants to know how he feels, but she never says anything like that, he's supposed to know that's what she's looking for. And he's digging his heels in and not telling her in her mind when he doesn't even know that's what she's looking for. How can he be accountable for what he doesn't know? How can he be accountable for digging his heels in on a subject matter when he don't even know that's the subject matter? Because again,
unfortunately, that same situation is going to happen for the next several generations.
no, it does not. Because what happens is, and what we're seeing,
Yes, it
what we're
does.
seeing is that women are beginning to, because again,
Because guys are not
wi-
going to make the accommodation. Go ahead.
women are killing it in the business world. Women are killing it in the education field. Women are killing it in the economic field. That we know that black women have more master's degrees than any other gender. That what happens is that the same things you do in work are the same things you can do in your personal life, and that's say what you mean and mean what you say.
Okay, let me give you another situation that's not romantic. That's professional.
Okay.
That actually
Mm-hmm.
happened to me. So
Mm-hmm.
I can address kind of what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm representing a guy who is a very senior law enforcement executive.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know him up until that point. You know my process. I sit down, I go over their resume, we talk about the kind of opportunities I'm currently working, talk about what they're looking for. There was no red flags on the resume at all, none. I proceed and start to reach out to some of my contacts with Fortune 100 companies. I find an opportunity for him. He goes and has a couple of interviews with them, and they are ready to make him an offer. They don't bring you back for 3 interviews and they don't like you. They just don't do that. So the day that I was expecting to get a call from them to say, we're going to make him an offer, and what's it going to take to get him? Which is generally the conversation that they have with me. I was working for an executive search firm, and so the owner of the firm calls me into his office, and he said, "Did you see the paper?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Your guy, your buddy over in law enforcement is all over second page talking about, he cheated on some test or something that they had to take and blah, 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 blah. And so he's being, I'm not sure what word he used, but I interpreted it as he's being forced to retire early. It was only maybe a month early, but early anyway." And he said, You need to drop him. Nobody's going to hire him now. And I'm livid. And so I called Candidate up because he was waiting for the offer too, because he knew that it had gone well. And I said to him, you seen the paper? And he said, what paper? And I said, Post. And he said, no, what's in the Post? And so I tell him about the article. And he says, oh, that. And I say to him, you obviously knew that this was a possibility, because it's not like this just kind of bubbled up unbeknownst to you. Why didn't you tell me? And his response was that same man thing. You didn't ask me. Well, I'm not a trained interrogator. It's just not what I do. I'm generally working with people who want my help. And so if you want my help, you arm me with all of the information that I'm going to need to be able to assist you. And I don't know what I need to ask, because I couldn't possibly know everything that's going on. And he was like, well, in our profession, and I said, but I'm not in your profession. I'm working with people in your profession, but I'm not in your profession. I didn't ask.
That's not our profession. That's not our profession.
But that's what he said to me.
That's what he said.
He said, in our profession, we ask for information. And I said, bullshit. I'm sorry. I'm not buying that. And let me just tell you that they have asked me to drop you and stop working with you. I made a commitment to you when I signed on to this job, and I'm going to do it. But I'm telling you right now, if you don't tell me everything that could potentially go wrong, I will drop you, and I won't feel responsible for reneging on my commitment. And he said, no, there's nothing else. But I think the reason that I shared that is because I saw your reaction to what my friend had done. And I think that women, while it's no question she was being manipulative, I don't think she was doing it to cause harm or damage. I think she was just trying to find out something, and she was nervous about asking. And I think that's where it was coming from. If I were to guess, I would think.
So I think you've just seconded what I've been saying. First, that you can't be accountable for what you don't know, and that I know from experience that one of the things you'll say is that anything that
now, but I didn't at that point, because it was new for me.
So to that point is that I can understand the don't ask, don't tell. What I don't understand is that because again, they say, don't ask a question that you can't handle the answer to. And when she started being manipulative, she wanted an answer, but as opposed to asking a question, she wanted to force him to give her information. And again, that he's not going to give, just like in the scenario you gave, he's not going to give information that's going to be detrimental to the outcome. So that the information he gave was honest right now. Here's the thing. I think that people tend to ask this question, and I think it's an unfair question. People say, are you looking for a relationship? And the answer could be yes, but not with just anybody.
And it could be no, depending on who it is.
But that's what I'm saying, that it's not the relationship that you're looking for. It's, do you want a relationship with this person?
And before I know you, I can't answer that.
That's right. And so at the point in which he was honest with her, because again, the thing is, you want honesty, and he was honest. But then when she started trying to manipulate him, she painted a picture, it seems to me, of somebody he didn't want to be in a relationship with,
And
because you're not going to commit to somebody who's going to go away for the weekend with some guy, which tells you they sleeping together, all this and all that, while he's trying to get to know you. And he's been investing his time in you.
I really do believe that the choices and the consequences is one thing when it's just choices that you make about your own situation and there's really no other person to be impacted by it.
Which is what I say in the abstract.
Yes. However, when clearly there is another person that's going to be impacted by the choices you make, there's a much greater need for serious consideration. Because now it's not just whether or not I can handle the outcome. It's, can I handle what I'm getting ready to do to you?
Again, full circle back to what I was saying in the beginning, because, whether it's 13, 15, or whatever, that if you learn that you have to have empathy to how it impacts others, then you're going to make a different decision. That if you don't care how that person receives it and what their ramifications are, then it's good, bad, and that's the bad part. If she don't want to be with me because of that, no problem.
I don't think she didn't want to be with you. I think that in this particular case, she didn't give it. She didn't consider the possibilities of the impact. I really don't think she did.
I agree. And that's why.
And unfortunately, they never talked about it. Everything got derailed and the crash happened and the dead bodies were dragged off to the morgue, and that was the end of the story.
Let's go back. And again, this is why I use examples that go back to your needs or whatever. That back in the day, you've always heard this situation where people thought, oh, if I get pregnant, then he'll commit to me.
No.
Exactly.
Not
and again, because that if a man is making a decision, he's making a decision about the person's character, and all those different things. And if you say that you're going to change my life, impact my life, without considering the impact on me, do I want to give you that power in my life? And that's where it comes down to committing to somebody where.
And I hear you, and all I would say in her defense, because she's my friend, is that I don't think she thought it through. I think
it's not the intent; it's the impact.
I'm not arguing with that. I'm just saying that probably was not her intent.
And that's what I'm not saying it was her intent.
Unfortunate for both of them that everything got derailed when I don't think it had to.
And I guess the question for me would be, what's her takeaway from that? How would she handle it differently?
I don't think she would. I think she would definitely have told him who she was going with, because he would have had no problem with it.
And it would have been no issues.
And I think that she could have said to him before or after she got back, listen, we've been seeing each other for a while. I just kind of want to get a temperature check on where we are. And see where they were, because that's what she wanted. She wanted to know, not that she was trying to manipulate him into marrying her. I don't think it was that. I think she just kind of wanted to know where they were, and things derailed. And so there you go. What happens when you make choices and don't always consider the consequences? Listen, Brian, as usual, I could probably talk to you for another 2 hours. But we got to wrap this session up. And I want to thank you so much for taking your time to do this with me, to share your perspective, to at least give the audience something to talk about. So I hope you all will join us again next week for another episode. And thank you for joining us. Thank you, Brian, for doing this with me.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy these lively conversations and ability to share different perspectives. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate you thinking about me as a guest, and good luck as you go forward.
Thank you.